Welcome back to Hidden Science. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you're ready for a topic that raises more questions than answers. Today, we're looking at one of the most unusual government seizures in modern scientific history. What happened to Nikola Tesla's personal papers after he died in 1943? Most of us know Tesla through the big highlights: AC power, wireless ideas, and experiments that often sounded impossible at the time. But the final years of his life were very different from the fame he once had. He lived alone in a small hotel room in New York. He continued to sketch new designs, write notes, and plan devices he believed could change energy, communication, and even defense systems. Almost all of that work stayed in his room. None of it went through a normal laboratory or archive. When Tesla died, federal agents arrived within hours. They collected boxes of documents, notebooks, and devices. Some were logged, some were not. Some were returned years later. Others disappeared completely. Today we're going to look at that story from the start, without exaggeration, and ask simple, direct questions. What did they take, and why? To understand the scale of this event, imagine the scene on January 8th, 1943. Tesla had passed away the night before. Hotel staff entered his room and found piles of papers, stacked boxes, wire coils, sealed envelopes, and several metal cases that held unknown devices. The US was deep in World War II. Military and intelligence agencies were searching for anything that might help with energy systems, communication, or new forms of weapons. Tesla's name was already linked to wireless power, high voltage transmission, and something he called Teleforce, a concept often misunderstood and misrepresented, but still interesting enough to attract attention. Agents from the Office of Alien Property arrived first. Their job was to secure materials belonging to foreign nationals, even though Tesla had been a US citizen for many years. The FBI entered the picture soon after. By the end of the day, dozens of items had been boxed, tagged, or moved off-site. Some of the paperwork describes what was taken. Other notes conflict. A number of documents remain redacted. This raises the question that guides our entire episode. Which of Tesla's files were officially seized? What information did they contain? And why did many of them remain inaccessible or missing for decades? Here's what we're going to cover, so the story is easy to follow. Tesla's final years. What projects he was working on, and why the government cared. The seizure timeline, who entered the room, what they logged, and where the boxes went. The evidence trail, hotel records, FBI memos, OSS documents, and probate files. Technical review, a simple look at the main ideas in Tesla's late research and whether they were feasible with 1940s technology. What's missing, gaps, redactions, and documents that have not resurfaced. Modern meaning. Why this case still matters, and what it says about scientific transparency. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of the physical records, the technical ideas behind them, and the unanswered questions that remain. To understand the significance of the seized files, we need a clear picture of Tesla's final decades. This period shows why his room contained so many technical papers, and why government agencies moved so quickly after his death. By the 1930s, Tesla was no longer operating a full laboratory. His financial situation had declined, and most of his major backers had moved on to other projects. He had brilliant ideas, but limited resources. This forced him to work from hotel rooms, small rented spaces, and temporary workshops. His notes, sketches, and prototypes were spread across boxes, folders, and suitcases. This explains why the New Yorker hotel room held such a mix of drafts, technical diagrams, and device components. Even though Tesla lived quietly, he continued to promote new concepts. Many journalists described him as a man working on world-changing inventions, even when he refused to show his full designs. Some stories grew out of misunderstanding, but others were based on ideas he had genuinely explored for decades. 3 specific concepts defined his late career work. 1. Wireless power transmission. Tesla believed large-scale wireless energy transfer could be possible using resonant systems. He spoke about transmitting energy without wires through tuned frequencies and high-voltage systems. While he had demonstrated some wireless effects earlier in life, his large-scale plan was still untested and unclear. Still, the idea was attractive because it implied long-distance power delivery, communication possibilities, and new military applications. Tesla kept diagrams and notes about towers, coils, capacitors, and frequency tuning. These were not organized into one book. They were scattered across letters, notebooks, and loose sheets. This gave the government plenty to sort through and interpret. 2. High-voltage resonance and discharge experiments. Tesla continued to explore resonance at high voltages. His notes included coil dimensions, spark gap setups, and mathematical relationships between frequency and output. During the 1940s, high-voltage research was relevant to radar, radio, and certain defense systems. Any documents describing controlled high-frequency discharge or new coil geometries would have attracted attention, especially when the US military was trying to improve radar and detection systems. These papers may not have explained a full device, but they helped show how Tesla was thinking about energy behavior under extreme electrical conditions. Even partial drawings could be important if they hinted at new configurations. 3. Teleforce, the misunderstood. Death ray. Tesla used the word teleforce to describe a directed energy device he believed was technically possible. The press turned it into a death ray, which was not accurate. Tesla described the idea as a way to accelerate particles or transmit energy in a controlled direction. His claims were vague, and no verified prototype exists. But the concept, energy delivered at distance, overlaps with research that would later appear in defense programs. Because of this overlap, even unclear notes or early sketches would be of interest to wartime agencies. They might show potential directions for further research. Even if Tesla's version could not function with the equipment of the era, Tesla's reputation at the time. By the late 1930s, Tesla's public image was a mix of respect and confusion. Scientists recognized his early achievements, but many doubted his later claims. Still, he maintained connections with engineers, diplomats, and journalists. He continued to give interviews where he hinted at confidential work or upcoming breakthroughs. Some listeners believed him, others thought he was exaggerating. But because the country was deep into World War II, even a low-probability idea could be considered worth investigating. The FBI and other agencies monitored many public figures, especially those with foreign backgrounds or unusual technical claims. Tesla was born in the Austrian Empire, lived in several countries, and communicated with people across Europe. None of this made him suspicious, but it explains why authorities paid attention when he died. What was in his room when he died? The hotel room contained engineering notebooks, letters to colleagues, pages of diagrams in no clear order, metal cases filled with coils and components, folders with financial papers, envelopes labeled with inventions, old patents and drafts of new ones, personal journals, newspaper clippings he used for reference, half-finished device parts. The mixture of personal and technical material made it difficult to separate important documents from routine notes. This complexity is part of why the hotel staff, the Office of Alien Property, and the FBI took such broad action. Why the government responded so quickly. The response was not random. At the time, the US was racing to improve radar. There were concerns about foreign espionage. Any advanced electrical technology could have military value. Tesla's claims about directed energy were publicly known. His nationality history triggered legal procedures under wartime rules. Even if half his ideas were unrealistic, agencies could not ignore a large collection of technical work belonging to someone with Tesla's background. Why this context matters. Understanding Tesla's late-life environment helps us judge the seized files more fairly. The room was not a secret lab. It was a mix of real engineering notes, unfinished ideas, and old personal records. But even in that state, the material could still contain useful information about electrical behavior, resonant systems, or device geometry. This is the foundation we need before looking at what the government actually took. Now that we understand Tesla's situation in his final years, we can follow the physical trail of what happened after he died. This part is based on documents, hotel records, FBI memos, and probate files. None of these sources are perfect. Some conflict with each other, and some are heavily redacted. But together, they create the clearest view we have of the chain of custody. Month 1. Timeline. From the moment Tesla was found. Tesla died sometime on the night of January 7th or early morning of January 8th, 1943. When hotel staff discovered his body, they reported it to the authorities and informed the management team. The New Yorker hotel already knew Tesla kept technical papers and mechanical items in his room. This meant someone had to secure the space quickly. Within hours, the Office of Alien Property, OAP, arrived. Wartime regulations instructed this office to secure property connected to foreign nationals or sensitive material. Even though Tesla was a U.S. citizen, his birth outside the country made his belongings subject to a review process. This was standard procedure during World War II, but still unusual for a scientist's personal papers. The FBI entered the process later that day. Their involvement appears in internal memos dated shortly after Tesla's death. Those memos show the agency wanted to understand whether Tesla's documents contained information that could affect national defense or wartime research. 2. The hotel inventory list. The hotel staff created an initial list before government officials removed anything. This list included trunks, wooden crates, metal boxes, bundles of papers, engineering sketches, sealed envelopes, mechanical parts, coils, and electrical components. The list described the containers, not the content inside each box. This gap is important. It means we rely on later government files to know what was in those containers. Some descriptions were vague, such as papers, misconfirmed devices, or diagrams. This is why later disagreements appeared about which items were taken and which were returned. 3. What the Office of Alien Property removed. According to OAP files, they removed a total of 80-plus boxes and containers from Tesla's room. Some sources list 80, others list 83 or 86. The boxes were transported to a storage site used for evaluating secured property. These boxes were then reviewed by a government-appointed electrical engineer named Dr. John G. Trump, who was asked to determine whether any of Tesla's material had military or scientific value relevant to the war. His report stated that many papers were speculative, incomplete, or not practically useful. But the report was short and did not detail each item he reviewed. The missing detail in his summary is part of the mystery. 4. What the FBI logged. The FBI's own records include internal memos discussing Tesla's reputation, handwritten notes describing certain technical papers, requests for updates from the Office of Alien Property, questions about Tesla's Teleforce ideas, statements verifying which items were considered sensitive. Many memos are redacted. The blacked-out sections often appear in paragraphs that reference electrical systems, high-voltage equipment, or anything that might be classified as potential military interest. The FBI never stated publicly whether they held the boxes or simply reviewed summaries. Some documents imply that the OAP kept custody and the FBI only evaluated what they needed. Other documents imply the FBI moved some materials into restricted archives. The lack of consistent language is why researchers still debate what actually ended up in FBI possession. 5. Probate files and family requests. Tesla's family, including his nephew, Sava Kasanovich, requested the return of Tesla's property. Probate files show a negotiation between Tesla's estate, the OAP, and the Yugoslav government. These files include correspondence about ownership, lists of items marked return, arguments over which documents were personal versus technical, records of meetings, shipping receipts for returned items. Several boxes were eventually returned to the family. But the probate records list fewer boxes than the OAP's original count. This means some containers were withheld, lost, or reassigned. Kosanovich later claimed some materials were never returned and were kept by US officials. He did not provide exact numbers, but his claim matches the imbalance in the documented counts. 6. What survives today? Some of Tesla's papers ended up at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade. These include patent drafts, letters, lab notebooks, early diagrams, personal records. However, even the museum acknowledges they do not have everything. Their archive does not include certain items described in the hotel inventory or OAP memos. Several key notebooks referenced in FBI and OAP correspondence don't appear in the museum collection. Researchers who studied the Belgrade archive note that some subjects, especially high-voltage discharge behavior or directed energy concepts, are missing key pages or full notebooks. 7. Evidence of missing items. Here are the most consistent gaps across all sources. Notebooks related to high-frequency experiments, diagrams of coil configurations, envelopes labeled with new invention notes, unknown metal cases listed in the hotel inventory, early drafts of Teleforce explanations, test results from his small-scale resonance experiments, detailed engineering sketches from late 1930s. None of these items have surfaced in public archives. Some are mentioned only once in early lists and never again. Others are referenced in FBI memos but not found in any surviving collection. 8. Redactions and their implications. Several FBI documents contain redacted text beneath headings, such as technical evaluation, possible application, military considerations. Redactions alone do not prove something dramatic, but they do show that certain subjects remained classified or sensitive for reasons not fully explained. The redacted portions appear in the exact places where Tesla's work on energy transfer, resonance, or particle streams would logically be discussed. This pattern is what keeps the lost files question alive. 9. Why the evidence trail matters. Without the timeline, the lists, and the memos, the missing documents might seem like a myth. But the paper trail shows there were real boxes, real evaluations, and real disagreements about what should be returned or withheld. The gaps are not random. They match areas where Tesla was exploring ideas that overlapped with military research of his time. To understand why Tesla's documents drew government attention, we need to break down the real technologies he was exploring near the end of his life. This part does not rely on myths or exaggeration. It focuses on what Tesla actually worked on, based on surviving patents, letters, notebooks, and interviews with engineers who evaluated his ideas. We will look at the technical concepts in simple terms, how they function, and what experts believe about their feasibility using 1930s-40s technology. 1. Wireless power, resonant energy. Transfer. Tesla believed energy could be delivered over distance through resonance. In simple terms, resonance means two systems set to the same frequency can exchange energy efficiently. He used large coils that produce strong oscillating electrical fields. The idea was that if the receiving device matched the same frequency, it could absorb power without a wire. Tesla's notes describe coil dimensions, tuned capacitor values, frequency targets, voltage requirements, ground conduction assumptions. Modern engineers agree resonance is real and does work, but long-distance transfer on the scale Tesla imagined would require enormous infrastructure. Energy loss would also be high, with the materials and electronics available in the 1930s. Still, the principle itself was valid. It was not fantasy. Tesla's notes show he was studying field strength, tuning accuracy, and energy stability. These topics were relevant to radio, radar, and communication systems during World War II. Even partial diagrams or calculations could help someone trying to improve transmitter efficiency. This explains why these notes may have been reviewed carefully. 2. High-voltage alternating systems. Tesla worked with extremely high voltages earlier in his career, and he continued developing variations in the late 1930s. He built experimental circuits using large coils, spark gaps, transformers, and capacitors. These setups allowed him to create strong electric fields and observe how energy behaved under high-frequency switching. His late-life papers include coil geometries, spacing measurements, spark gap timing, breakdown voltage notes, waveform sketches, efficiency comparisons. These details might sound basic now, but during wartime, high-voltage systems were essential. Radar, radio transmitters, and early detection equipment depended on better control of high-frequency energy. Although Tesla no longer had access to full laboratory tools, his handwritten calculations still demonstrated methods for pushing voltage levels higher than what many engineers were attempting at that time. Even if his designs were incomplete, they showed thinking patterns that could influence new prototypes. This area directly overlapped with US military research priorities, which helps explain official interest in these documents. 3. Short-range resonance experiments. Several notes describe small experiments Tesla performed in his room. These involved tuning two coils at similar frequencies and measuring how energy moved between them. He wrote observations about field strength and distance. Some sketches show handheld receiving coils or simple metal plates. These experiments were not evidence of large-scale wireless power, but they demonstrated resonance principles in compact setups. Engineers reviewing such notes could use them to refine small receivers, filters, or matching networks. These ideas were practical at the time. They required only basic components, yet they supported broader research efforts in tuning, detection, and signal clarity. 4. Directed energy concepts. Teleforce. The word teleforce generated confusion in newspapers, but Tesla used it to describe a directed energy device. His explanation focused on accelerating particles or transmitting energy along a controlled path. He believed it could function without explosive propellants and could direct energy in a narrow beam. Key elements mentioned in his notes and interviews include particle acceleration, controlled discharge, insulating chambers, guidance methods, energy buildup and release. Modern engineers consider Tesla's version impractical for the 1930s. The materials, vacuum technology, and power requirements would have been far beyond what he had available. However, the underlying concept of delivering energy directionally was not unreasonable. Early versions of directed energy research appeared in several countries during World War II. If Tesla's notes included calculations on particle movement, field strength, or controlled discharge, agencies would want to review them, even if they were not complete or functional. This is likely why these files received extra scrutiny. 5. Evaluating feasibility. With 1930s Jar-40s technology. Here's a practical breakdown of what experts believe. Technically possible at the time, small-scale resonance experiments, closer-range wireless transfer, high-voltage coil behavior studies, frequency tuning systems, improved capacitor and inductor designs, technically limited but relevant, medium-distance wireless energy, extended resonance systems, structured discharge mechanisms, high-frequency broadcast improvements, not feasible with the available technology, particle beams with controlled long-distance delivery, large-scale wireless power grids, long-range directed energy, any device requiring precise high-energy particle control. This picture shows why Tesla's papers could be valuable, even if his big claims were not achievable. The details inside his sketches and calculations might have helped engineers improve real equipment. 6. Why these concepts caught government interest. During World War II, the US was looking for advantages in communication, detection, and energy control. Any research involving resonance, high voltage, new transmission methods, directional energy would attract attention. Tesla had already earned respect for earlier inventions, so it made sense for agencies to examine his late-life notes carefully. Even incomplete documents might provide ideas for circuit improvements, alternative coil layouts, early-stage system concepts, insight into electrical behavior under stress, hints toward new research directions. This is not speculation. It is how technical review teams operate today. Any potentially useful idea is documented, reviewed, and compared with existing research priorities. 7. Why these notes matter to the missing files. Question: the government would not take Tesla's claims at face value. They would check whether anything inside his papers could be used or adapted. The fact that some topics overlapped with military needs helps explain why certain items might have been held longer, redacted, or set aside for classified evaluation. This brings us to the next part of the story. What is missing, what is redacted, and what cannot be traced in any archive today. At this point, we know the timeline, the inventory lists, and the technical areas Tesla was exploring. Now, we look at the part that keeps the conversation alive. The items that clearly existed in 1943, but cannot be located today. These gaps are not based on rumor. They appear directly in government documents, probate files, and museum records. 1. The notebooks that appear in lists but not in archives. Several FBI and Office of Alien Property memos mention specific notebooks that do not appear in any public collection today. These notebooks are described using simple labels such as HF notebook, resonance notes, experimental log, coil tests, Teleforce drafts. None of these titles appear in the holdings of the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. Archivists who cataloged the Belgrade collection confirmed the absence of these materials. They also note missing page numbers in some surviving notebooks, which suggests certain sections were removed. The missing notebooks match the same subjects that received the most government attention: high-frequency energy behavior, resonant transfer, and directed energy concepts. 2. Missing envelopes and labeled drafts. The original hotel inventory refers to envelopes labeled with invention names. These envelopes do not appear in the probate return records. At least 2 FBI memos reference sealed envelopes with formula sheets. But there is no trace of these items in surviving archives. Some researchers believe the envelopes were combined into larger boxes before being shipped. Others believe they were held back for further evaluation. There is no official explanation. 3. Metal cases. Listed but never accounted for. The hotel's first inventory list included metal cases containing unknown devices or components. The list did not describe what was inside. These cases do not appear on later return records. They also do not appear in the museum's catalog. A 1943 memo from the Office of Alien Property mentions heavy cases that required additional review. These references stop after the initial evaluation. That is the last documentation we have. The content of these cases is still unknown. 4. Redactions in government files. When the FBI and OAP records were released years later, several documents had thick black redaction blocks. These redactions appear mainly under headings that reference technical review, possible application, coil configuration, discharge potential, national defense relevance. Redaction does not automatically mean something secret. Sometimes it hides names or unrelated details. But the consistent placement, right after technical evaluations, raises questions. Some redacted parts appear in sections discussing Tesla's Teleforce claims. These redactions may simply hide explanatory comments, but because the surrounding text is technical, the missing portions stand out. 5. Contradictions between sources. The number of boxes removed by government officials is not consistent. Hotel list, 80 plus containers. OAP report, 83 containers. Later files, 68 containers. Probate return. Less than 60 containers. This does not mean dozens were stolen or destroyed. It could mean boxes were merged or repacked. But it also means there is no complete, consistent chain of custody. Even conservative historians agree the numbers do not line up. Something was added, removed, or reclassified during processing. 6. Disputed claims from Tesla's family. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovich, argued that certain documents were never returned. He believed some were held by US officials and may have been routed into restricted archives. He did not provide a complete list, but his statements matched the gaps seen in government paperwork. Other researchers disagree with Kosanovich, saying the missing items may have been personal or financial notes with no scientific value. But the memos referencing technical content make it hard to ignore the possibility that some important material was not returned. 7. Why the missing files matter. The missing notebooks, envelopes, and metal cases are not important because of legends. They matter because they represent documented gaps in a chain of custody that was supposed to be complete. Most of Tesla's ideas were complicated, but not impossible to test. Even partial notes could show early versions of concepts that were scientifically relevant, especially during wartime. These unresolved gaps lead directly to the next question. What did the surviving files actually show? And what might the missing sections have contained? To make the evidence easier to understand, this section walks through the types of visual material that survive in the record. These images do not answer every question, but they help us see what the government reviewed and where the gaps appear. 1. Archival photos of Tesla's room. Surviving photos show a small, crowded space with boxes stacked against the walls. Papers sit on tables and chairs. Coils, metal tubes, and small mechanical parts are visible. The photos confirm that Tesla kept both personal and technical material in the same area. They also show why the inventory lists were vague. Many items were mixed together without labels. 2. Close-ups of the seizure list. Several pages of the hotel's inventory still exist. The handwriting is clear, but the descriptions are brief. Trunk with papers, crate with devices, metal case, bundle of drawings. The simplicity of these entries explains why later researchers struggled to match items to specific documents. The lists show that the staff focused on container type, not content. 3. Redacted FBI memos. When viewed closely, the redaction blocks often appear within paragraphs about technical evaluation. Even when the surrounding text is unclassified, the blocked sections prevent us from knowing what was said about coil configurations, discharge characteristics, energy transfer concepts. The visual contrast between open text and blacked out portions makes the missing information obvious. 4. Patent diagrams and surviving drafts. Some of Tesla's drawings survived and show consistent themes. Resonance circuits, tuned coil pairs, high voltage transformers, symbolic layouts of transmission paths. These diagrams help us understand what the missing notebooks might have looked like. The style and layout match descriptions in the FBI memos. 5. What the visual evidence suggests. The visuals don't prove a hidden breakthrough, but they show. Tesla documented his work with sketches and notes. Some labeled items listed in inventories do not appear in archives. Redactions consistently cover technical portions. The surviving diagrams match the topics that remain incomplete. This visual trail gives us the baseline needed for the final parts of the episode, the modern impact of the missing files, and what this case means today. At this point, we have a clear picture of what happened to Tesla's papers and where the gaps remain. Now, we turn to the practical question. Why does this case still matter today? The first reason is transparency. Tesla was a private inventor who kept most of his work to himself. When the government stepped in after his death, his documents moved into a system where records can be restricted, repacked, or reclassified. Once that happens, it becomes difficult for the public to know which items were evaluated, stored, or removed. This uncertainty fuels ongoing debate among historians, scientists, and technology researchers. The second reason is the impact on research. Tesla's ideas covered topics that remain relevant: resonance, high-voltage behavior, wireless transfer, and directional energy. Even if his final designs were incomplete, they could still offer early insights. When material like this disappears or remains partially restricted, it slows down the process of verifying, replicating, or understanding the inventor's full body of work. Modern engineers prefer complete archives because they can test ideas directly rather than rely on partial notes or secondary accounts. The third reason involves public trust. When people see redactions, missing boxes, and inconsistent inventory counts, they naturally question the handling of the case. Even without conspiracy theories, incomplete documentation reduces confidence in institutional transparency. This is especially true when the material relates to scientific or technological development that affects society. Finally, the case highlights the balance between national security and open research. Governments often classify material to protect strategic interests. But once the immediate risk has passed, releasing that information can help the scientific community learn from past work. The Tesla files sit right on this boundary: historically important, technically relevant, and still only partially accessible. Before we close the episode, let's bring everything together in a clear and simple way. Tesla spent his final years working alone, using hotel rooms instead of a full laboratory. His papers, sketches, and device parts were stored in boxes, drawers, and suitcases. When he died in 1943, government officials moved quickly to secure these materials because the country was in the middle of World War II, and some of Tesla's ideas overlapped with military research. The physical trail shows that more than 80 containers were taken for review. Some were logged and later returned to his family. Others appear in early lists, but not in final records. A number of notebooks, envelopes, and metal cases cannot be traced in any public collection today. The surviving documents cover resonance, high-voltage behavior, early wireless concepts, and Tesla's small-scale experiments. The missing sections match the same technical areas that attracted government attention at the time. Redacted memos highlight points where officials evaluated potential military relevance. The main takeaway is simple. The story is not about secret weapons. It's about incomplete records, inconsistent documentation, and the long-term impact of missing scientific material. Understanding this helps us see the case more clearly and avoid exaggerated claims. Thanks for staying with me through this deep look at the lost Tesla files. We covered what happened in Tesla's final years, what the government took from his room, what was returned, what never showed up again, and how the remaining documents connect to real scientific questions. Even though parts of the archive are missing, the evidence gives us a clearer picture of the event without relying on speculation. If you found this breakdown helpful, let me know by hitting like. It helps the channel grow and signals that you want more episodes like this. If you're new here, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next investigation. I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Which part of the Tesla case do you think deserves more attention? The missing notebooks, the redactions, or the technical evaluations? Drop your view in the comments. Your ideas help shape future episodes. If you want to explore related topics, check the suggested videos at the end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.